Isn't that time 3 minutes fast? Yeah, it is. So we're not ready yet. Yep. 30. Okay. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Rapid City Legal and Finance Committee for Wednesday, August 15th, 2018. I'd like to start this meeting off with a roll call and determination of quorum. Here. Now that a quorum has been established, I would welcome a motion to adopt the agenda as presented unless there is a committee member that needs to add, modify, or remove an item on this agenda. Motion to adopt by Mr. Solomon and second by Ms. Drury. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any further discussion? Okay. All right, now let's move on to our general public comment. This is the time for any member in the audience to discuss items currently not on today's agenda. Are there any speaker request forms? I do not have any up here. Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that cares to speak? Okay. All right. Seeing none, let's close and move to our consent items. Today's agenda has items 1 through 9 on today's agenda. Let's open this up to public comment. Is there anyone that wishes to speak? Okay, let's close public comment. Are there any committee members here that would wish to pull any items on today's agenda?
At what time?
I don't know. Okay. Mr. Solomon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to pull number 8 just to get some background.
Great. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so let's approve 1 through, oops. Oh, again, Mr. Solomon, sorry.
Forgot my note. Number 9, so I can abstain, please. I see a letter from my employer on it.
Oh,
So.
okay, great. Thank you for doing that. All right, I would welcome a motion to approve items 1 through 7 at that point.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Laurenti and second by Mrs. Drury. Let's go to, oh wait, all in favor?
Aye.
And any, all right, good. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, let's go to item number 8. Mr. Solomon, you have the floor.
Thank you. Want me just to read this in real quick?
Yep.
Appeal the denial for new construction in historic district located at 1221 12th Street pursuant to SDCLI-19A-11.1 and RCMC 17.54.080. I would like to allow Sarah Hansel to give us an update on this and an overview of. I didn't mean to do that, but I did it for you. Just for the record. So, Sarah, can you go ahead and give us a little overview on this?
Yes,
item?
of course. So item number 8, file 18RS003 is one of our historic application review files. As you know, a few years ago, we revised our historic review processes so that a majority of our reviews are conducted administratively, which means that an applicant submits an application, it's reviewed by city staff, and then we check in with the State Historic Preservation Office. I'm going to refer to them today as the SHPO office, so acronym for your afternoon there. And generally, for most all projects, we're able to administer a permit administratively if there are no issues or concerns based on the standards for historic preservation. Today, we have an example of a project where we do need the council to weigh in on this project. The proposed project is for new construction at 1221 12th Street. I have a short presentation today, just a summary and overview of the process that's been undertaken so far and some background information about the project so that you know what it entails. So I'm just going to go over that, talk about the standards for new construction in historic districts. There's just one standard in this instance that we have some cause to take a second look at. Some plans and illustrations of the project and then what our recommendations are. So this is called an appeal because the city staff cannot issue a permit for this administratively because there's one standard for new construction that isn't met here. And so what that means is that in order for the city to provide a permit for this, they need to make a determination that there are no feasible and prudent alternatives and that all possible planning to minimize harm to historic resources has occurred. That language comes from state law, and that's just part of the historic review process. If we're going to issue a permit for this project, our finding is that we've looked at everything we need to look at. I'm not going to go into detail on these. I just want to point out that there are 11 standards for new construction in historic districts. They really have to do with compatibility of design in terms of the size of structures and how they're blending in with the environment around them. It also is very context specific in that it depends on, well, what is around this site? Are there very many historic structures or aren't they? And so in going through the review process, the city, the Historic Preservation Commission, and the SHPO office made a determination that all of the standards are met with the exception of height. And the height standard says that new buildings or additions to existing buildings may not exceed a standard variance of 10% of the average height of historic buildings on both sides of the street where proposed new construction is located. So that 10% variance is kind of what we're looking at in terms of what is the maximum threshold for how tall the structure could be built and be administratively approved. So the top photograph is showing the site where the home is proposed to be built. I will note that the applicants are in the audience today. So they own this site, and they also own the home directly north of this and reside in that home as well. The aerial map on the bottom shows its location and its surrounding neighborhood context. This is a 2,500 square foot, two-story home. It's located on the corner of 12th Street and Fairview. This is in the low-density residential zoning district. It is on the western edge of the historic district. The map here shows the entire historic district as well as kind of a zoom in on this particular block. So the white boxes show non-contributing structures and the dark boxes show contributing. So on this street that we're looking at, 12th Street, there's only one other contributing building, and that's located at 1207 12th Street. So in this instance, when we're looking at the height, we're only comparing it to one other building. We don't have a lot of data points to work with. And the existing construction on this block is generally smaller structures. So from the aerial photograph here, you can see that there was actually a home constructed on this site previously. It burned in fire a few years ago. So this is a Google Street View showing what that building looked like as constructed. There are some similarities between the building that's being proposed and this building. They are roughly the same height. Give or take a few inches. So from what you're seeing here is a similar representation of how the height of the proposed structure would look on the street. The plans aren't exactly the same, the key difference being that the applicants today are also proposing to have an attached two-car garage, which was not included as part of the development of the home formerly on this site. And here's some photographs of what that house had looked like before, just to kind of give you a sense of what kind of height we're talking about here. Next, I'll go through a series of photographs of other properties on the street. The property that you see here is outside of the historic district. And then moving along, this is the development site where the proposed home is to be located. And then moving further along north here up the street, this is the home that the Schroeders currently own and reside in. And this is the contributing structure that we're comparing the height against. It has a height of 22 feet, 10.8 inches. And then these are the rest of the non-contributing structures on this block. As you can see, they're very small, very modest homes. So as far as the review process, we started with city staff taking a look at this. They brought in a proposed project. The applicants met with the Historic Preservation Commission in a consultation in order to get some feedback on their design and take a look at some of the factors of this case. After they met with them, they did make some changes to their design. So here, this is the original proposal. And here's what they developed after meeting with the HPC. They changed the pitch roof from 612 to 512, increased the window size to be more consistent with window fenestration patterns on the block, and the second floor was lowered by 6 inches. So if you look at the attachments on the agenda today, what you see is the case report, and that's the official documentation that is required by the SHPO office to take a look at all of the relevant factors of this case. And it's essentially the property owner's argument that they're making that they have considered all alternatives that are feasible and prudent in this situation, and that they've done everything that they can to minimize the harm to the historic property. And what the case report talks about is that considering the amount of non-contributing buildings on this block, we're really looking at how the property blends in with the neighborhood. Looks like, was there a question I can? No? Okay. So the HPC met at part of their official meeting and reviewed this case report, and they voted to agree with the findings of the case report. Essentially, they agree with the applicants that they've considered all feasible and prudent alternatives for this specific case, and that they've done everything that they can to blend in with the neighborhood and to minimize any harm to historic structures on that block. Something else that the applicants did is that they went around to their neighbors and solicited letters of support and talked with their neighbors, checked in with them about what they were proposing to do, and have several letters of support which are attached to the agenda. So this is just referencing back to that height. Just to go through kind of what the factors here are then. The proposed building is 27 feet, 4.75 inches. Like I said, that's approximately the same size as the home that was built there previously. And in order to meet the height standard, this structure would need to be 2 feet, 2 inches shorter. So we're talking about a relatively small amount of distance that would be the difference between being able to be administratively approved or not. And I did note the garage earlier. The applicants are also through a process right now to obtain a variance for a side yard setback reduction. I wanted to keep the presentation short, and I can certainly address any questions, as can the applicants who are here today. With that, I would just say that our recommendation is to find that the applicants have investigated all of the feasible and prudent alternatives that they need to, and that they've reduced the harm to any historic buildings adjacent to them.
Thank you. And so I have the floor currently. I just want to give credit to the homeowners for going above and beyond, in my opinion, and look like it's going to be a beautiful home. I'll certainly support any motion to grant the exception. So.
Anyone else? Mr. Laurenti?
Thank you, Chair. I'll make a motion to approve with the most recent agreed upon design with Historic Preservation Commission and the owners of the property.
Second.
I believe, are there options listed for your approval, option A? Or option 1? Okay.
Option 1, then.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Very good.
All right, I have a motion to approve this appeal, the denial for the new construction. Do I have a second? And Mr. Solomon second. All right. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any denials? All right. Motion carries. Okay, thank you very much. All right, moving to item number 9. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm
You didn't want to speak on it, you
abstaining.
just want to abstain
That's right.
from it?
Yep,
Okay, great.
out of the conversation.
All right, we have a request for council approval to subordinate the CDBG assisted mortgages.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion to approve by Mr. Laurenti, second by Mrs. Drury. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And motion carries. All right, that's the end of the consent calendar. Moving to non-consent items. Looks like we have a number 10 under the Public Works Department. Do you want me to read it first? Okay. We have a second reading and recommendation of ordinance number 6271, an ordinance to revise the rates, fees, and charges for the city's water utility by amending Chapter 13.08 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. I have Mrs. Drury, you have the floor. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. May I ask Dale Tech a question, please?
Absolutely.
Dale, I think this would maybe be for you or for Dan. Is part of the reason we're doing the water rate increase because at some point down the road we need to build another water facility in Rapid City?
Certainly. Our water rate structure through this study,
Reserves.
throughout the reserves, we're going to have large capital improvements necessary, be it a water storage tank, things that you can't just fund with cash on hand. You'll have to do some bonding with it. Currently, we have not identified the specific cost nor planned into our 5-year capital plan the construction of a water treatment plant. However, with the rate structure that we have proposed through our consultant and previously approved by the council, that puts us in a strong economic or financial position in our water fund to be able to obtain bonding at a very favorable rate to build these future large improvements such as a water treatment plant.
And so that's one of the reasons for the increased rates is to build the reserves for the bonding, a better favorable rate for the bonding.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. I have another question. May I?
Absolutely.
I know when they built the Jackson Springs, did some of the people that live in that area also receive an increase on their water fees or
No, that
Okay.
that was a bond that was issued, and all ratepayers pay on that bond.
okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Laurenti, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for Public Works, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you. My question is, what impact, if, as we work through this, what impact of amending this particular item to be spread out over a longer period, if it went from 5 to, say, 7 or 9 or 10 years, what kind of impact would that have on the ability to the viability and the effectiveness of the service?
I'm going to defer to Dan Kuhn. Actually, I'll make a little comment, but the industry standard, nationwide standard, are to do 5-year plans, rate plans. Anything beyond that, you're guessing. You don't know what is going to happen. You don't know the adequacy of your rates. There are many other factors involved in that, but I'll let Dan maybe follow up with
Thank you. I
some
appreciate your
additional
input.
information.
Thank you.
Hi, Dan Kuhn. I'm the Assistant Public Works Director. I would just echo what Mr. Tech just said, that predicting cost and revenues beyond a 5-year period becomes somewhat more crystal ball than trying to look at it within a 5-year period, even though there are assumptions that you have to make over that period of time. Also, by spreading it out over a longer period of time, if you don't have the same percentage or amount of increases over that 7-year period as you would in a 5-year period, your revenues are then decreased, and then that does not allow you the resources that are necessary to do the capital improvement projects that you have in your capital improvement plan. Therefore, your capital improvement plan has to be cut back because the revenue isn't there to support them. As Mr. Tech said before, one of the key things that we're trying to do here is we know that somewhere in a 5 to 10 year time period, we will be probably constructing a new water treatment plant to replace the Mountain View water treatment plant, and building our reserves to a strong level so that we're in a favorable position for debt service and bonding or loans, however that facility is financed, is a key component of this. And getting there within a 5-year period then puts us in a good position that within the 6th or 7th year, if we go out for that bonding, we've showed the bonding companies that we're being responsible. We have financial guidelines that we're following, and not only do we have those, but we're actually following them. And so those are several of the reasons why we like to stay within a 5-year period for planning.
So let me ask you, though, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here, because I understand the study's based on 5, so if we had requested for future reference for some of the people who will be on the council longer term, is it a matter of how we order the study, the time period? I understand the standard is 5, but if we requested the study to be done for a 7-year necessity period for that service to be successful, you're saying that it would change those percentages and those proportions based on what the service needs to deliver over 7 rather than 5 or 9 instead of 5, correct?
Right. If we, in the future, we commission another study, we can make it for 2 years or 5 or 7. The consultant will do whatever time period we want.
And I think where the difficulty with this one is the fact that previous councils and mayors have failed to take care of this piece of infrastructure, and now we're in a hurry-up mode to get caught up. So I think that's the difficult part of this. And I feel like that might have been something we wanted to take into account when we ordered this study, but in my opinion, I mean, that might be more political than it is from a substantive point of view for the service to be delivered properly and safely like it should be. Unfortunately, politics always plays a part of some of these things where we're passing on a new or additional cost to the service users. So I appreciate your input, and I just wanted to bring that up, not only for this one to be continued debate and talk about, but for maybe future studies that we do in different areas where we're delivering services. So I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Laurenti. Mrs. Drury.
Thank you, Chair. May I ask
Absolutely.
Mr. Tech one more question, please? Thank you. And thank you, Dan, for your answers to those questions. Dale, do you know when you're going to try to place this new water treatment facility on the CIP?
We're currently in what's called a utility master plan study phase right now for both water and wastewater. There's a lot of legwork that has to be done, and that's a planning period that goes out to the year almost 100 years. So we're looking ahead that far to see what our infrastructure needs are, where major water transmission mains are going, and part of that analysis will include where to place a new water treatment plant, how to get the raw water to it. All that work is being done as we speak. So I would anticipate in the next 18 to 24 months, we'll have a pretty good idea of what size plant that we're going to need for the future and where it should be located. And based on that, then we'll try, we will include that in our future capital improvement listing of improvements that need to be made.
Okay, thank you. And then in the meantime, we are grateful that we have the Mountain View plant that still does work.
Yes.
Even though it's old, it still works, and it works well.
Right.
Well, maybe we can 3D some parts or something like that. Okay, I yield.
Right. Thank you so much. I'd welcome a motion on item number 10.
Move to approve.
Okay, a motion to approve by Mr. Laurenti, second by Mr. Solomon. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Mrs. Drury opposes. Okay. Item passes. Let's move on to, under the Finance Department, number 11. Second reading and recommendation of ordinance number 6272, an ordinance regarding supplemental appropriation number 5 for 2018.
Move to approve.
Got a motion to approve by Mr. Laurenti, a second by Mr. Solomon. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Second.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Solomon, second by both of you. Okay, we are done. Thank you, everybody.
Very good. Nice job.
Rusty.